Between 2020 and 2025, the US added over 2 million new millionaires. And in 1990, that would have meant a lot more people moving into the top 1% of Americans by investable net worth. But in 2026, hitting the $1 million mark doesn't mean what it used to. And the gap between where most millionaires sit and what it takes to actually be in the top 1%, it's bigger than you think. I'm Christopher Nelson, and I manage an $8 million microfamily office. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through the exact net worth thresholds for the top 10%, 5%, and 1% in 2026. Show you the portfolio composition at each level and reveal what I call the Great Decoupling, the shift that separates those who build wealth from those who actually operate it. But first, we need to talk about how we're measuring wealth, because there's two definitions, and confusing them is one of the most expensive mistakes you can make. The first is traditional net worth, total assets minus liabilities, including your primary residence. The second is investable net worth, and this one strips out your primary residence entirely. So why does this matter? Well, before I get into details, you need to understand something about the shape of this climb, because it's not a ladder, it's an exponential curve. The median American household has a net worth of about $193,000. Getting from that median to the top 10%, that requires accumulating over $1 million more. It's a big jump, but getting from the top 10% to the top 1%, that requires more than 10xing your net worth. Most people think wealth builds linearly. You save more, you invest more, you get more. And that works for the first million or two. But after that, the rules change. And if you're still running the same playbook that got you your first million, you're going to plateau. Here's why. At each tier, the portfolio composition changes fundamentally. Not the size, but the structure. What people own, how they own it, how they operate it. And that's what the top 1% understand that the top 10% don't. The other thing to understand is that your primary residence is a lifestyle asset, provides shelter. Maybe it appreciates, but it doesn't generate income and it's illiquid. What actually determines your financial freedom is investable net worth, capital that's actively working for you in markets, in business, in productive assets. So I'm going to show you both numbers at each tier. The gap between them will tell you something critical about how wealth is actually structured at each level. Let's start with the top 10%. Here's what the data says. According to the latest Federal Reserve survey of consumer finances and the Fed's distributional financial accounts report, which are the gold standards for wealth data in America, to be in the top 10% of total net worth, you need $1.6 million. Sounds like a lot, right? But here's where it gets interesting. To be in the top 10% of investable net worth, the capital that's actually working for you, it drops to $842,000. That's a gap of over $700,000. And where's that money? Well, it's locked up in a primary residence. If you're at this level, here's what your life probably looks like. You're a successful professional, maybe a senior engineer, a director at a tech company, a physician, or an established business owner. You've maxed out your 401k and IRAs. You might have some company stock or a rental property. You're comfortable, but you're working full time and you're starting to feel a tension that nobody talks about. You've accumulated significant wealth on paper, but you don't feel wealthy. And most importantly, you don't feel free. And here's why. When you look at the Fed's DFA report, the most current asset data we have, here's how the top 10% is actually invested. Stocks and funds make up 31% of total assets, the largest single holding. Real estate comes in at 22%. And for most people in this bracket, that's almost entirely in their primary residence. Unless they're holding rental properties in their personal names, that would show up here too. Then there's retirement accounts. Pensions and 401ks combine for 21%. Private business equity, that's ownership in any business or entity you've set up outside the public markets. And if you're holding rental properties inside of an LLC instead of your personal name, that shows up here, not under real estate. At this level, just 7%. Now, look at that breakdown. Between your home, your retirement accounts, and your company stock, over 40% of your wealth is in assets that are either illiquid, locked up in retirement, or concentrated in a single ticker. You're wealthy on paper, but locked up in practice. Now, the biggest mistake at this level, and I made it myself, is the stock concentration trap. After my first IPO at Splunk, I watched my net worth swing $100,000 or more per day. Everything was concentrated in a single stock. When the market smiled, I felt like a genius. When it didn't, I panicked. I had over $3 million on paper, but 80% of it was in a Splunk stock during the 6-month lockout period. My wife was pregnant, we wanted to buy a house, and I was paralyzed, watching my net worth move like a roller coaster with no way to get off. And if you're a tech professional watching this, that story probably hits close to home. RSUs, ISOs, stock options. Your compensation is designed to concentrate your wealth in a single ticker. Now, that's not a wealth strategy. In reality, that's gambling. So here's what the strategic focus is if you're at this level. First, begin systematic divestiture. Don't dump everything overnight. That's a tax disaster, but start the transition. Second, implement tax-aware diversification. Use your RSU vesting schedules, implement tax loss harvesting, think strategically about timing. Third, start thinking in systems. Create your first investment thesis, not buy index funds and hope, but a documented strategy with clear reasoning. And fourth, track investable net worth separately. Stop counting your house and retirement accounts as part of your working capital. Those are long-term assets, not productive capital for today. And here's the first-gen reality that nobody talks about. There's no family playbook for this. You're building it from scratch. But that's not a weakness. You don't have inherited bad habits. You can build the right system from the start. Now let's move to the top 5%. For the top 5%, the total net worth threshold is $3.8 million, and an investable net worth is roughly $2 million. If you're in this bucket, you've more than doubled your investable net worth from the top 10%. That, my friend, is significant progress. And life has changed some, but not as much as you expected. You probably have multiple income streams now, salary, RSUs or equity, maybe some investment income trickling in. Estate planning conversations have started. And tax complexity has definitely increased. And you might be looking at your portfolio thinking, I have nearly $4 million. Why don't I feel like I can stop working? Here's the answer. The Federal Reserve groups everyone from the 90th to the 99th percentile into the same bracket in their data. And there's a reason for that. Because structurally, there's no meaningful difference between the person at 1.6 million and the person at 3.8 million. The portfolio composition looks the same. Stocks and funds, still 31%. Real estate, still 22%. Retirement accounts, still 21%. Business equity remains at 7%. Bigger numbers, same structure, same strategy. So think about this. You've scaled complexity without changing the game. That's the trap. Because what got you here won't get you to the top 1%. You want to know the biggest mistake that I see at this level? Complexity without systems. Here's the pattern. Multiple investment accounts across different platforms, 2 or 3 financial professionals who don't coordinate with each other, scattered spreadsheets, no unified view of their portfolio, real estate over here, stocks over there, some private equity deal a friend recommended there, and you're making reactive decisions as opportunities come up. And maybe the most important, there's truly no overarching strategy to understand what's a good decision and what's a bad decision for their goals. I see people spending 10 hours researching a new car purchase and 10 minutes managing their wealth. They're leaving tax optimization opportunities worth $50,000 or more per year on the table, taking on unnecessary risk because they don't fully understand the correlations across their portfolio, and ultimately using cookie cutter strategies from the advisor that you've outgrown. Now, I've been in this exact spot. When I was around the 4 million mark and I was managing it like a weekend project, you know, the one that you keep putting off over and over. Eventually, I knew that it had to change if I wanted to accomplish my goals. But here's what makes it harder. I was the first person in my family to have this kind of wealth. I couldn't call my dad and ask, hey, how did you handle this? I couldn't lean on family wisdom about tax strategy or entity structure. I had to figure it out. And honestly, I made expensive mistakes along the way. That experience is exactly why I built my own microfamily office. So, what's the strategic focus at this level? First, build an operating system for your wealth. You need a systematic approach, not more assets. Second, formalize your advisory teams. You need a certified tax planner, an estate attorney, and a bookkeeper who all work together, not in silos. And third, create a tax strategy that goes way beyond April 15th. You need to be planning for the year ahead, not just the year that just passed. And fourth, this is critical, shift your mindset from accumulation to architecture. Stop collecting assets. Start designing a system that helps you accomplish your goals. Now, here's where things get fascinating. Because when you see the portfolio data for the top 1%, you're going to realize the entire game changes. The portfolio composition, the leverage, the asset mix, everything shifts. And it's not what you would expect. So here are the numbers for the top 1%. Total net worth, $11.6 million. Investable net worth, $9.3 million. Notice something? Investable net worth is now 80% of total net worth. At the top 10% and 5%, it was around 53%. Nearly everything at the top 1% is productive capital. Now look at the portfolio composition, because this is where the whole story changes. Stocks and funds surge from 31% to 48%. Personally held real estate shrinks from 22% to 15%. Private business equity nearly doubles from 7% to 13%, and retirement accounts collapse from 21% to just 8%. This is what I call the Great Decoupling. At the top 10%, over 40% of your wealth is in dependent assets, your home or your employer's retirement plan, things that you don't fully control, and only 38% is in ownership assets. At the top 1%, that ratio flips. Dependent assets drop to 23%. Ownership assets rise to 61%. That's the shift from dependent wealth to ownership wealth. And it's not about being a better investor. It's about becoming the CEO of your wealth. The biggest mistake at this level, what I call the 1 more million trap. You hit 8 million, 10 million investable, but you're still treating your portfolio like a growth engine instead of an income engine. This is where the microfamily office becomes essential. Right now, I'm managing a portfolio that generates $200,000 in annual income. It covers all my family's essential expenses while continuing to grow the principal. We live off the portfolio, not a salary. For me, that's the goal. Actual freedom, not a big number on a statement. This is the transformation from the top 10% to the top 1%. It's not more money. It's a completely different game. And here's why so many people miss it. You can hit every one of these numbers and still be stuck. The data shows what matters isn't the threshold. It's the transformation in how you structure your wealth. Think about it. Somebody with $2 million, most of it in their home, a 401k they can't touch, and concentrated company stock, versus somebody with $2 million in diversified income producing ownership assets. Both are top 5% on paper, but only one has actual financial freedom. Why do most millionaires never reach the top 1%? Because they never make the shift from dependent wealth to ownership wealth. They keep upgrading to a bigger and bigger house, a fancier car, relying on their 401k as their primary wealth building tool. Instead of building a portfolio of assets they own and operate just like a business. And here's what nobody tells first generation wealth builders. Making money and managing wealth are two totally different skill sets. You've mastered one, now it's time to master the other. But the good news, you already have the operational skills. You can run complex systems every day at work, in your career, in your business. You're not learning something foreign. You're applying what you already have to a new domain. That's the shift. So if you're still watching, chances are you fit into one of these tiers. And you're probably realizing that the strategy that got you here isn't the strategy that gets you to the next level. So if you have between $1 million and $30 million in net worth, and you want to actually start managing your wealth like a business, I'd love to have you at our next live workshop. It's a 2-hour deep dive on building the foundation of your microfamily office. You'll leave the workshop with a legacy statement, investment thesis, and portfolio structure that's tailored to your goals. At the time of recording this, we've had over 1,300 people attend the workshop. Head to wealthops.io/go or click the link below this video to register. Our next workshop is likely a few days away. After you register, you should check out this video on the microfamily office structure that we're going to cover in the workshop. Let's keep building.